The Alpha King's son just broke through the palace gates during the blood oath ceremony, screaming a name that hasn't been spoken in the Northern Territories for 3 years. Little Friedrich, barely 4 winters old, his silver eyes wild with terror, sprinted past his father's Luna, past Isolde, the woman who raised him as her own, and launched himself into the arms of a cloaked Omega standing at the edge of the coronation square. The entire pack watched as the child sobbed into her shoulder, crying, Mama Greta, don't let her hurt me anymore." The royal decree shattered like ice under a hammer. Alpha King Wolfram stood frozen on the dais, his ceremonial blade still dripping with his own blood from the oath he'd just sworn to unite the packs under one law. His eyes locked onto the Omega, onto Greta, and the world seemed to tilt. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to exist anymore. He'd made sure of that. 3 years ago he'd exiled her under pack law, had her name erased from every record, had threatened death to anyone who spoke of her. And yet here she stood, his son clinging to her like she was the only safe thing in a world of monsters. "Tell me the city you're watching from so I can send you a hug, because what happens next will break you the way it broke them." Isolde's face drained of color. The Luna, beautiful and cold as a winter storm, stepped forward with trembling hands. "Friedrich," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut. "Come here. Now." The boy only buried his face deeper into Greta's cloak. Greta didn't move, didn't speak. But her hazel eyes, those eyes Wolfram used to dream about before duty crushed those dreams, met his across the square, and in them he saw everything. Accusation, grief, and something far more dangerous, resolve. The head of the Council of Elders, ancient Conrad with his white braided beard and staff of ironwood, slammed his staff 3 times against the stone. "Explain this," he commanded, his voice echoing across the silent crowd. "Explain why a child of royal blood recognizes an exile. Explain why he calls her mother." Wolfram's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. The forbidden bloodline. The secret he'd buried so deep it should have dissolved into nothing. Because Friedrich wasn't Isolde's son. The boy was Greta's, born in secret during the year Wolfram had kept her hidden in the southernmost cabin of his territory, before the council had discovered the truth and forced his hand. Before pack law had demanded he cast her out or face losing his throne. He'd chosen the throne. He always chose the throne. And he'd taken Friedrich from Greta's arms when the boy was only 6 months old, had given him to Isolde to raise, had told himself it was for the best. An Omega couldn't raise an heir. An Omega with no family name, no bloodline, no power. She had no right to the son of an Alpha King. That's what the council had said. That's what pack law demanded. But the look in his son's eyes 3 years ago, when Wolfram had torn him from Greta's embrace, still haunted him. Friedrich had screamed himself unconscious, had cried for weeks. And then slowly he'd stopped crying, stopped speaking her name, stopped asking why Mama was gone. Wolfram had thought the boy had forgotten. He'd been wrong. Isolde moved faster than anyone expected. She crossed the distance between them in 4 long strides, her ceremonial gown billowing behind her like smoke, and reached for Friedrich. "Give me my son," she hissed at Greta. "He is mine." "He was never yours," Greta said quietly, and the square erupted. Wolves began to shift, their human forms blurring into fur and fang. Guards rushed forward. Members of the pack surged toward the center, some shouting for Greta's arrest, others demanding answers from their king. The smell of rage and confusion saturated the air, thick as blood. Conrad's staff slammed down again. "Silence!" The elder's power rolled across the crowd like thunder, forcing them all into stillness. Even the half-shifted wolves whimpered and dropped to their bellies. Only Wolfram remained standing upright, his alpha dominance a shield against Conrad's command. "Is this true?" Conrad asked, turning those ice-chip eyes on Wolfram. "Is the heir your son with the exile?" Every pair of eyes in the square fixed on the Alpha King, waiting, judging. Wolfram could lie. He could claim Friedrich was Isolde's, that the boy was confused, that Greta was a madwoman trying to steal a prince. The council might even believe him if he played it right. If he crushed Greta here and now, if he made an example of her, if he let Isolde claim the boy and pretended this moment had never happened. But Friedrich turned his small face toward his father, and those silver eyes exactly like Wolfram's own, were filled with tears. "Papa," the boy whispered. "Please. She hurts me. Make her stop." Something inside Wolfram shattered. "Yes," he heard himself say, his voice rough as gravel. "Yes, Friedrich is my son with Greta. She is his mother by blood." The square exploded into chaos again. This time, Conrad didn't bother trying to silence them. Isolde let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a scream. "You bastard," she spat at Wolfram. "You let me raise him. You let me believe." Her voice broke. 3 years. 3 years I mothered that child, and you let me think he was ours." "He was never ours," Wolfram said, and he heard the cruelty in his own words even as he spoke them. "You knew you couldn't bear children, Isolde. You knew I needed an heir. So you used me." Her eyes glittered with unshed tears and murder. "You used me to hide your shame. To hide her." "I did what was required," Wolfram said, but the words tasted like ash. "Pack law. Pack law says an alpha's heir must come from a recognized bloodline," Conrad interrupted, his voice cold as a tomb. "Greta has no bloodline. She is unclaimed, nameless. The child's legitimacy is in question." "His legitimacy is not in question," Wolfram growled, and his alpha power made the air shimmer. "I claim him. I claimed him the day he was born. He is my son, my heir, and I will tear apart anyone who says otherwise." "Then you violated the royal decree when you took an Omega as a hidden mate," Conrad said. "The same decree you swore to uphold not 10 minutes ago. The same decree that forbids unions that might weaken pack bloodlines." Greta's arms tightened around Friedrich. The boy had gone quiet now, his small body rigid with fear. He knew, even at 4 years old, that something terrible was happening, that the adults were deciding his fate with words he didn't fully understand. "I never took her as mate," Wolfram said, and he saw Greta flinch as if he'd struck her. "We had an arrangement. Nothing more." "You're a liar," Greta said softly, and there was such pain in her voice that even the most hostile wolves in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. "You told me you loved me. You told me we'd find a way." "I told you what you needed to hear to keep you compliant," Wolfram said, and he forced himself to meet her eyes, to let her see the wall he'd built between his heart and his duty. "You were a convenience, Greta. A warm body when I needed one. Nothing more." 'Twas a lie. It was the worst lie he'd ever told. But it was the lie that might save her life. If he could convince the council she meant nothing to him, they might let her walk away again. They might exile her a second time instead of executing her for violating the terms of her first exile. But Greta just smiled, sad and knowing. "If that's true," she said, "then why does Friedrich dream about me every night? Why does he cry for me in his sleep? Isolde told him I was dead, didn't she? She told him his real mother had abandoned him. Isolde's silence was answer enough. She told him monsters would come for him if he spoke my name," Greta continued. "She told him that bad children who remembered dead mothers would be sent away. And when he couldn't stop crying, when he couldn't forget me no matter how hard he tried, Greta's voice broke. She looked down at Friedrich, at the bruises on his small arms that her cloak had hidden until now. She hurt him to make him forget. The crowd's energy shifted from chaos to fury. Wolves might follow pack law, might bow to hierarchy and tradition, but harming a child, especially an alpha's child, was taboo across every territory. Even the council members looked disturbed. "Is this true?" Conrad demanded, turning to Isolde. The Luna's face had gone from pale to flushed, her breath coming in short gasps. "He needed discipline," she said. "He was wild, uncontrollable. He refused to obey, refused to learn, refused to accept me as his mother. I did what any parent would do." "You beat a toddler for grieving his mother," Greta said, and now her voice held steel beneath the softness. You terrorized him. You made him afraid to sleep, afraid to speak, afraid to be a child. And you did it because you couldn't stand that he loved someone more than he loved you. Isolde lunged. She shifted mid-leap, her elegant form dissolving into a massive white wolf with fangs bared and murder in her eyes. She was aiming for Greta's throat, moving too fast for the guards to intercept. But Wolfram was faster. He caught Isolde mid-air, his hand closing around her wolf's scruff, and slammed her into the ground hard enough to crack stone. She yelped and tried to twist free, but he pinned her with one hand and let his alpha dominance pour over her like boiling water. She whimpered and submitted, her body going limp beneath his power. You, he said quietly, and his voice was more terrifying for its lack of volume, are done. He released her and stepped back. Isolde shifted back to human form, naked and trembling on the broken stone, tears streaming down her face. I loved him, she whispered. I loved that boy. I tried so hard to be enough for him. But he only ever wanted her. She looked up at Wolfram, her expression shattered. And you let me fail. You watched me break myself trying to make him love me, and you never told me why it was impossible. You never told me I was trying to replace someone who was still alive. For the first time since the ceremony began, Wolfram felt something like guilt. Isolde was cruel, yes, brutal in her desperation, but he'd made her that way. He'd given her an impossible task, make a child forget his mother, and then judged her when she failed. I'm sorry, he said, and meant it. Your apology means nothing, Isolde said. She stood, ignoring her nakedness, ignoring the stares of the crowd. The council will strip you of your title for this. They'll take your throne. They'll take your son. And I will watch and smile while they do it. She was right. Conrad's expression confirmed it. The Alpha King has violated sacred pack law, the elder announced. He has produced an heir of questionable bloodline. He has lied to his Luna, to his council, and to his people. By the ancient codes, we have grounds to call for abdication. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Some wolves looked eager at the prospect. There were always those who wanted power, who saw weakness in their leader and moved to exploit it. Others looked troubled, uncertain. Wolfram had been a strong king, had united the territories when they'd been on the brink of civil war, had brought prosperity even to the lowest omegas. But pack law was pack law. There is another option, Greta said suddenly. Her voice wasn't loud, but something in it made everyone listen. A blood challenge. The square went dead silent. Conrad's eyebrows rose. You would challenge the Alpha King. You, an Omega with no training, no pack, no bloodline. You would die in seconds. Not me, Greta said. She looked at Wolfram, and her expression was unreadable. I challenge for custody of Friedrich. Under pack law, if two parents cannot agree on a child's care, either parent may call for a blood challenge. The winner takes the child and all parental rights. That law hasn't been invoked in 200 years, Conrad said slowly. But it still stands, Greta pressed. And I invoke it now. I challenge Alpha King Wolfram for the right to raise our son. Wolfram stared at her. She couldn't be serious. A blood challenge wasn't just a fight. It was combat to submission or death. And she was an Omega. She had no wolf strong enough to face his alpha. She would lose in minutes, and the council would declare her unfit and take Friedrich anyway. You're trying to force my hand, he said quietly, realization dawning. You know I won't fight you. You know I'll submit rather than hurt you. Will you? Greta asked. Because 3 years ago, you ripped our son from my arms and threw me out into the snow with nothing but the clothes on my back. You told me if I ever returned, you'd kill me yourself. So forgive me if I don't trust your mercy. The crowd was riveting between them now, sensing the deeper story, the buried pain that went far beyond politics and pack law. If you submit to her, Conrad said to Wolfram, you forfeit all rights to the child. He becomes hers alone. And by extension you lose your heir. Without a legitimate heir, your claim to the throne weakens considerably. Then I'll have another child, Wolfram said, but the words felt hollow. With whom? Conrad asked pointedly. Your Luna has just been publicly humiliated and is demanding divorce. No other high-born she-wolf in the territories will accept you now. Not after this scandal. You'll be lucky if you're not challenged for your title within the month. Wolfram knew it was true. He'd backed himself into a corner through his own secrets and lies. Every choice he'd made to protect his throne had actually brought him closer to losing it. I accept the challenge, he said. Tomorrow at dawn. The ceremonial grounds. No, Friedrich said suddenly. His small voice cut through the tension like a knife. No fighting. No more hurting. The boy pushed away from Greta and stood between his parents, his small hands outstretched to both of them. Tears streaked his face, but his expression was determined. Mama Greta and Papa both love me, he said. So no fighting. We all stay together. That's not how it works, little one, Conrad said, not unkindly. Your parents cannot both raise you. They must decide. Then I decide, Friedrich said, and there was something in his voice. Something that made every wolf in the square feel the weight of alpha power, potential power, the power of what he would become. I'm the heir. I choose. I choose both. Friedrich. Wolfram began. I choose both, the boy shouted, and his power burst out in a wave that sent several nearby wolves stumbling. For a 4-year-old to have that much dominance was unheard of. Impossible. Unless his bloodline was stronger than anyone realized. Conrad's eyes widened. The boy has exceptional power, he murmured. More than he should at this age. More than you did, Wolfram, at twice his age. Because he's not just my son, Wolfram said slowly, a terrible suspicion forming in his mind. He looked at Greta. What aren't you telling me? Greta's hands trembled. I didn't know until after you exiled me, she whispered. I didn't know until I saw the birthmark on his shoulder blade. The 3 crescents. The square erupted for the 3rd time. The 3 crescents. The mark of the Lost Bloodline. The mark that hadn't been seen in the Northern Territories for 500 years. Not since the royal family of the ancient kingdom had been slaughtered in the Great Purge. The mark that, according to legend, would appear on the child destined to unite all wolf packs under one true throne. You're descended from the lost kings, Conrad breathed, staring at Greta with something like awe. Your bloodline isn't weak, it's been hidden. My grandmother told me stories, Greta said. But I thought they were just stories. Fairy tales to make a nameless Omega feel special. I didn't know they were true until Friedrich was born and I saw the mark. And by then, her voice broke. By then Wolfram had already decided I was worthless. Wolfram felt like he'd been punched in the chest. All this time, he'd convinced himself he was protecting the pack by casting Greta out. That her low status made her unworthy of raising a prince. That pack law demanded it. But if she carried the lost bloodline, then Friedrich wasn't just an heir. He was the heir. The one the prophecies spoke of. The one who would reunite the fractured wolf kingdoms and bring an age of peace. And Wolfram had nearly destroyed that by letting his pride and fear dictate his choices. The blood challenge is nullified, Conrad declared. If the boy carries both the Alpha King's power and the lost bloodline, then his parents cannot be separated. Pack law demands that bloodlines of such power be preserved and protected above all else. Including, he added with a stern look at Wolfram, above personal pride and political convenience. What are you saying? Isolde demanded. Her voice was ragged. That she gets to come back. That the Omega who seduced our king gets to waltz back into the palace and play happy family. I'm saying, Conrad said coldly, that she was never just an Omega. She is a queen by birthright. A birthright that supersedes your own, Isolde. If she carries the lost bloodline, then by ancient law, she has a higher claim to the throne than even the Alpha King. The implication hung in the air like a blade. You're saying I should step down, Wolfram said. Let Greta rule. I'm saying the council will investigate her lineage, Conrad replied. If her claim is verified, then yes. Pack law would demand a transfer of power. The Lost Kings were meant to rule all territories. Their bloodline takes precedence over all others. Greta looked horrified. I don't want the throne, she said quickly. I never wanted any of this. I just want my son safe. I just want him to grow up without fear. What you want is irrelevant, Conrad said, not cruelly but matter-of-factly. If you carry that blood, you have a duty to your people. To all wolf kind. No, Greta said. No, I won't, I can't. She looked desperately at Wolfram. Tell them. Tell them I'm not fit to rule. Tell them I'm just an Omega who got lucky. But Wolfram was looking at her differently now. Seeing her not as the weak, forgettable lover he'd convinced himself she was, but as the woman she'd always been. Strong enough to survive exile, strong enough to raise a child alone in the wild territories, strong enough to walk back into the lion's den knowing she might die just to protect her son. She would make a better ruler than he ever had. I won't tell them that, he said quietly. Because it would be a lie. Greta's eyes filled with tears. Wolfram, please. I spent 3 years trying to forget you, he interrupted. 3 years trying to convince myself that what we had meant nothing. That you were just a mistake I needed to correct. But every time I looked at Friedrich, I saw you. Every time he laughed, I heard your laugh. Every time he cried, I remembered how you used to sing to him to make him sleep. His voice roughened. I told myself I exiled you to protect the pack. But the truth is, I exiled you because I was terrified. Of what? Greta whispered. Of how much I loved you, Wolfram said, and the confession cost him everything. Of how much I needed you. I was raised to believe love was weakness. That a king had to choose duty over desire, power over passion. So when the council gave me an ultimatum, cast you out or lose my throne, I chose the throne. I chose wrong. The crowd was utterly silent now, transfixed by their Alpha King's raw honesty. I can't undo what I did, Wolfram continued. I can't give you back the 3 years we lost. Can't erase the nights you spent alone in the wild, or the pain of having your son ripped from your arms. But I can give you the truth. I loved you. I love you still. And if the council decides you should rule instead of me, I'll kneel before you and pledge my loyalty without hesitation. Because you deserve that throne more than I ever did. Greta was openly crying now. I never wanted the throne, she said again. I only ever wanted you. Wanted us. Wanted to raise our son together without hiding, without shame, without fear. Then we'll find a way, Wolfram said. He stepped down from the dais, crossed the square, and dropped to one knee before her. Before Greta, the exiled Omega, the mother of his child, the woman he'd tried and failed to forget. I, Alpha King Wolfram of the Northern Territories, renounce my claim to rule alone. I ask, I beg, that Greta of the Lost Bloodline accept joint sovereignty. That we rule together, as we should have from the beginning. That our son grows up with both his parents, and that the packs see what true partnership looks like. Conrad looked stunned. Several council members began arguing among themselves. Joint sovereignty hadn't been practiced since the ancient times, since before the Great Purge. But pack law did allow for it. Technically. This is insane, Isolde said. You're going to throw away centuries of tradition for her? Yes, Wolfram said simply. He kept his eyes on Greta. If she'll have me. Greta looked at Friedrich, who nodded eagerly, his small face shining with hope. Then she looked at Wolfram, searching his face for any sign of deception, any hint that this was another manipulation. She must have found what she was looking for because she said, on one condition. Anything, Wolfram said. You submit to a blood oath, Greta said. Swear before the packs and the council that you will never exile me again, never take our son from me, never choose power over our family. Swear it in blood and mean it, or I walk away right now and you never see either of us again. It was a test. Blood oaths were binding. Breaking one would cost Wolfram his wolf, his power, everything that made him alpha. If he swore and broke his word, he'd be reduced to human status, cast out of the pack permanently. He didn't hesitate. Wolfram pulled the ceremonial blade from his belt, the same blade he'd cut himself with during the earlier oath, and drew it across his palm. Blood welled up, dark and red. I, Alpha King Wolfram, swear by my blood and my wolf that I will never betray Greta again. I will never exile her, never take our son from her, never choose my throne over my family. If I break this oath, let my wolf be torn from me and let me die human and alone. The power of the oath settled over him like chains. Magic that old, that binding, couldn't be broken without consequences. He'd just given Greta total power over his fate. And he'd do it again in a heartbeat. Greta's breath caught. Then slowly she smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her in 3 years. Then I accept, she said. I accept joint sovereignty. Accept you. I accept this impossible, terrifying, beautiful second chance. Friedrich let out a whoop of joy and threw himself at both his parents, wrapping his small arms around both their necks. Together, he shouted. We stay together. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some cheered, some looked skeptical, some openly hostile. Change was never easy, especially change this dramatic. But Conrad nodded slowly, his ancient eyes thoughtful. The council will convene to discuss the particulars, he said. But for now, we acknowledge the blood oath and the claim of joint sovereignty. Greta of the Lost Bloodline, you are recognized as co-ruler of the Northern Territories. Your exile is lifted. Your name is restored. He paused. Welcome home, my queen. The words hung in the air. Queen. Greta looked overwhelmed, like she might faint or run or both. But Wolfram took her hand, the one not holding their son, and squeezed gently. We'll figure it out, he murmured. Together. Together, she echoed. But Isolde wasn't finished. The former Luna stood at the edge of the crowd, her expression twisted with rage and grief. You think this is over, she called out. You think the pack will just accept this? An Omega on the throne. You've made enemies today, Wolfram. Powerful enemies. And they will come for you. For her. For your precious son. Let them come, Wolfram said. His voice was steel. I've spent 3 years being the king everyone expected me to be. Dutiful. Ruthless. Lone. I'm done with that. If enemies want to challenge us, they'll face not one alpha, but 2 rulers with the Lost Bloodline behind them. They'll lose. Isolde laughed bitterly. You're a fool. And fools don't survive in our world. She turned and stalked away, shoving through the crowd. Several wolves followed her. Allies, conspirators, or simply those who smelled opportunity in the chaos. Wolfram knew she was right about one thing. This wasn't over. The real battle was just beginning. There would be challenges to their rule, attempts to discredit Greta's bloodline, wolves who refused to accept change. The council would scrutinize their every move. Friedrich would grow up under tremendous pressure, expected to fulfill a prophecy he'd never asked for. But as Wolfram looked at his son's happy face, at Greta's tentative smile, at the possibility of a future he'd thought he'd destroyed forever, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Oh, we should go inside, Greta said quietly. Friedrich is exhausted. And she laughed shakily. I need to sit down before I collapse. Wolfram nodded. He stood, still holding her hand, and turned to address the crowd. The coronation ceremony is postponed, he announced. We will reconvene when the council has reviewed our claim. Until then, I ask for your patience and your trust. Change is never comfortable, but it's necessary. The old ways weren't working. It's time we tried something new. Some wolves nodded. Others muttered among themselves. But no one challenged him directly, which was something. As they walked toward the palace, Wolfram, Greta, and Friedrich between them, the crowd began to disperse. Guards fell into formation around them, tense and watchful. Everyone knew the real danger would come later, in the dark, from those who preferred the old order. Inside the palace, the massive stone halls felt different than they had that morning. Less like a prison and more like a home. Or maybe that was just Wolfram's perspective changing. I'll have chambers prepared for you, he said to Greta. Next to mine. So Friedrich can move between. I want Mama Greta to sleep in my room, Friedrich interrupted. He was still clinging to her like he feared she'd vanish if he let go. Please. Of course, little one, Greta said softly. She looked at Wolfram. If that's all right. Whatever he needs, Wolfram said. Whatever you both need. They reached the royal wing, and Wolfram called for servants to prepare a room. As they waited, an awkward silence settled between the adults. 3 years was a long time. They'd both changed. The easy intimacy they'd once shared felt fragile now, like glass that might shatter at the wrong word. I have questions, Greta said finally. About your grandmother. About the Lost Bloodline. I need to know everything. She died 2 years ago, Greta said. But she left me letters, journals, evidence of our lineage going back 20 generations. I have them hidden in a safe place. I can retrieve them. The council will want to see them, Wolfram said. I know. Greta hesitated. I'm scared, Wolfram. I'm scared I'll fail. That I'll make a terrible queen. That the pack will reject me no matter what proof I have. I'm nobody. A woman who survived by trapping rabbits and sleeping in caves. How am I supposed to rule kingdoms? You're not nobody, Wolfram said fiercely. You survived 3 years alone in the harshest territories we have. You came back for your son even knowing you might die. You stood in front of hundreds of hostile wolves and demanded your rights. That takes more courage than most rulers ever show. He paused. You'll be a better queen than I ever was a king. I know it. Greta's eyes glistened. I don't know how to forgive you, she whispered. For what you did. For taking him from me. Some days I hated you so much I could barely breathe. I don't expect forgiveness, Wolfram said. I expect to spend the rest of my life earning back your trust. If I ever manage it, it'll be more than I deserve. Papa, Friedrich said sleepily. Are you sad? No, son, Wolfram said, forcing a smile. Just tired. Don't be sad, Friedrich said. He reached out and patted Wolfram's cheek with one small hand. Mama Greta teaches me that sad is okay. Sad is just love that has nowhere to go. So we give it somewhere to go, and then it's not sad anymore. Wolfram's chest tightened. Your mama is very wise, he said roughly. I know, Friedrich said matter-of-factly. Then he yawned, showing all his little teeth. Can we sleep now? I'm tired of big people problems. Despite everything, Wolfram laughed. Yes, we can sleep now. The servants arrived with linens and candles, setting up the chamber next to Wolfram's as a temporary space for Greta and Friedrich. It was smaller than the grand rooms Isolde had occupied, but it was warm and safe, with a large bed and a fireplace that crackled with fresh logs. Greta tucked Friedrich into bed, singing the same lullaby Wolfram remembered from 3 years ago. The boy was asleep within minutes, his small chest rising and falling peacefully. He never sleeps this fast for Isolde, Wolfram said quietly. He fights sleep, has nightmares, wakes up screaming. Because he was afraid, Greta said. Afraid that if he closed his eyes, the monsters would come. She stroked Friedrich's hair gently. I'll make sure he knows he's safe now. That the monsters are gone. I'm sorry, Wolfram said. The words felt pathetically inadequate. I'm so sorry. For all of it. Greta was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I heard you, you know. 3 years ago, the night you exiled me. You thought I'd already left the cabin, but I came back for a blanket I'd forgotten. I heard you crying, telling Friedrich you had to send his mama away, but it wasn't because she didn't love him. It was the only time I knew, really knew, that you cared at all. Wolfram's throat closed. He remembered that night. Remembered holding his infant son and sobbing into his blanket. His heart fracturing into pieces he'd thought would never heal. I've regretted that decision every day since, he said hoarsely. Every single day. Then don't make me regret giving you a second chance, Greta said. She turned to face him, her expression serious. I meant what I said about the blood oath. If you betray me again, if you hurt our son, if you choose power over us, I will make you wish you died in that square today. Understand? I understand, Wolfram said. And I won't. I swear it. They stood in the candlelight, watching their son sleep, and for the first time in 3 years, Wolfram felt the broken pieces of his heart start to knit back together. I should go, he said reluctantly. Let you rest. Wolfram, Greta said as he reached the door. Yes, thank you. For kneeling. For the oath. For finally choosing us. He nodded, not trusting his voice, and left. Back in his own chambers, Wolfram poured himself a drink and stared into the fire. The day had shattered everything he thought he knew about power, about duty, about himself. And tomorrow the real work would begin. But tonight, his son was sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. And Greta was home. That had to be enough. The dawn came too quickly. Wolfram woke to shouting in the corridors, the sound of running feet, and the distinctive smell of smoke. He was out of bed and halfway to the door before his mind fully caught up. His alpha instincts screaming danger. He yanked open the door to find guards rushing past, their faces grim. What's happening? He demanded, catching one by the arm. Fire in the east wing, my king, the guard panted. Someone said it deliberately. And there's been an attack. 3 council members found dead in their beds, throats cut. Wolfram's blood turned to ice. Where's Conrad? Alive and secured in the council chambers. But he's calling for you. Says it's urgent. Wolfram's first thought was Friedrich. He sprinted to the chamber next to his own and threw open the door. Greta was already awake, standing in front of the bed with Friedrich behind her, a small knife clutched in her hand. Her eyes were wild with fear. It's me, Wolfram said quickly, hands raised. You're safe. But we need to move. The palace is under attack. Who? Greta demanded. I don't know yet. But 3 council members are dead. Greta's face went pale. Isolde. We don't know. It's her, Greta insisted. Or someone working with her. This is revenge for yesterday. She told us she'd made powerful enemies for us, remember? She's making good on that threat. Wolfram wanted to argue, but his instincts told him Greta was right. Isolde had left the ceremony with followers, wolves who'd been loyal to her, who saw the new order as a threat to their own power. And his former Luna was smart enough, ruthless enough, to strike while the chaos was still fresh. We need to get you both to the safe room, Wolfram said. The reinforced chambers beneath the palace. Friedrich, come here. The boy ran to him without hesitation, and Wolfram scooped him up. Hold tight, son. They moved through the corridors in a tight formation, Wolfram leading, Greta close behind, guards surrounding them. Smoke drifted through the halls now, acrid and thick. Wolves were running everywhere, some fighting fires, others searching for intruders. The palace had descended into chaos. They'd almost reached the stairs to the lower levels when a figure stepped out of the shadows ahead. Isolde. She wasn't alone. Behind her stood a dozen wolves, all of them armed, all of them wearing expressions of cold determination. Among them, Wolfram recognized several high-ranking pack members, warriors who'd served him for years, advisors he'd trusted. Going somewhere? Isolde asked. Her voice was eerily calm. She'd changed from the ceremonial gown into combat leathers, her hair pulled back, a blade at her hip. She looked like what she truly was. A predator. Stand aside, Wolfram growled. Whatever grievance you have, we can discuss it after we've secured the palace. There's nothing to discuss, Isolde said. You made your choice yesterday. You chose the Omega over your Luna, over pack law, over everything we built together. So now I'm making mine. You killed council members, Wolfram said. That's treason. Punishable by death. Only if you're alive to punish me, Isolde said. She smiled, and it was the smile of someone who'd already committed to a path of no return. I didn't want it to come to this, Wolfram. I really didn't. I tried to be the perfect Luna for you. Tried to give you everything you needed. But it was never enough, was it? Because I wasn't her. This isn't about Greta, Wolfram said, though he knew it was a lie even as he spoke. Everything is about Greta. Isolde screamed, and her composure finally cracked. Everything has always been about her. Even when she was gone, she was here. In your thoughts, in your son's cries, in every moment you looked at me and wished I was someone else. She took a shaking breath. So I'm going to fix it. I'm going to remove the problem at its source. She looked past Wolfram directly at Greta, and the murder in her eyes was unmistakable. You'll have to go through me first, Wolfram said quietly. He set Friedrich down and pushed him toward Greta. Get him out of here, he told her. Take the back passage. It leads to the stables. Go. I'm not leaving you, Greta said. You have to. Friedrich is what matters. If anything happens to him. Nothing is going to happen to him, a new voice said. Conrad emerged from a side corridor, flanked by a dozen more guards. The old elder looked exhausted but determined. Isolde, you are charged with treason, murder, and conspiracy to commit regicide. Surrender now and your death will be swift. Continue, and I promise you it will be neither swift nor painless. Isolde laughed. You think I'm afraid of death? I'm already dead, Conrad. I died the moment Wolfram chose her over me. Everything after this is just cleaning up. The servants arrived with linens and candles, setting up the chamber next to Wolfram's as a temporary space for Greta and Friedrich. It was smaller than the grand rooms Isolde had occupied, but it was warm and safe, with a large bed and a fireplace that crackled with fresh logs. Greta tucked Friedrich into bed, singing the same lullaby Wolfram remembered from 3 years ago. The boy was asleep within minutes, his small chest rising and falling peacefully. He never sleeps this fast for Isolde, Wolfram said quietly. He fights sleep, has nightmares, wakes up screaming. Because he was afraid, Greta said. Afraid that if he closed his eyes, the monsters would come. She stroked Friedrich's hair gently. I'll make sure he knows he's safe now. That the monsters are gone. I'm sorry, Wolfram said. The words felt pathetically inadequate. I'm so sorry. For all of it. Greta was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I heard you, you know. 3 years ago, the night you exiled me. You thought I'd already left the cabin, but I came back for a blanket I'd forgotten. I heard you crying, telling Friedrich you had to send his mama away, but it wasn't because she didn't love him. It was the only time I knew, really knew, that you cared at all. Wolfram's throat closed. He remembered that night. Remembered holding his infant son and sobbing into his blanket. His heart fracturing into pieces he'd thought would never heal. I've regretted that decision every day since, he said hoarsely. Every single day. Then don't make me regret giving you a second chance, Greta said. She turned to face him, her expression serious. I meant what I said about the blood oath. If you betray me again, if you hurt our son, if you choose power over us, I will make you wish you died in that square today. Understand? I understand, Wolfram said. And I won't. I swear it. They stood in the candlelight, watching their son sleep, and for the first time in 3 years, Wolfram felt the broken pieces of his heart start to knit back together. I should go, he said reluctantly. Let you rest. Wolfram, Greta said as he reached the door. Yes, thank you. For kneeling. For the oath. For finally choosing us. He nodded, not trusting his voice, and left. Back in his own chambers, Wolfram poured himself a drink and stared into the fire. The day had shattered everything he thought he knew about power, about duty, about himself. And tomorrow the real work would begin. But tonight, his son was sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. And Greta was home. That had to be enough. The dawn came too quickly. Wolfram woke to shouting in the corridors, the sound of running feet, and the distinctive smell of smoke. He was out of bed and halfway to the door before his mind fully caught up. His alpha instincts screaming danger. He yanked open the door to find guards rushing past, their faces grim. "What's happening?" he demanded, catching one by the arm. "Fire in the east wing, my king," the guard panted. "Someone said it deliberately. And there's been an attack. 3 council members found dead in their beds, throats cut." Wolfram's blood turned to ice. "Where's Conrad?" "Alive and secured in the council chambers. But he's calling for you. Says it's urgent." Wolfram's first thought was Friedrich. He sprinted to the chamber next to his own and threw open the door. Greta was already awake, standing in front of the bed with Friedrich behind her, a small knife clutched in her hand. Her eyes were wild with fear. "It's me," Wolfram said quickly, hands raised. "You're safe. But we need to move. The palace is under attack." "Who?" Greta demanded. "I don't know yet. But 3 council members are dead." Greta's face went pale. "Isolde." "We don't know." "It's her," Greta insisted. "Or someone working with her. This is revenge for yesterday. She told us she'd made powerful enemies for us, remember? She's making good on that threat." Wolfram wanted to argue, but his instincts told him Greta was right. Isolde had left the ceremony with followers, wolves who'd been loyal to her, who saw the new order as a threat to their own power. And his former Luna was smart enough, ruthless enough, to strike while the chaos was still fresh. "We need to get you both to the safe room," Wolfram said. "The reinforced chambers beneath the palace. Friedrich, come here." The boy ran to him without hesitation, and Wolfram scooped him up. "Hold tight, son." They moved through the corridors in a tight formation, Wolfram leading, Greta close behind, guards surrounding them. Smoke drifted through the halls now, acrid and thick. Wolves were running everywhere, some fighting fires, others searching for intruders. The palace had descended into chaos. They'd almost reached the stairs to the lower levels when a figure stepped out of the shadows ahead. Isolde. She wasn't alone. Behind her stood a dozen wolves, all of them armed, all of them wearing expressions of cold determination. Among them, Wolfram recognized several high-ranking pack members, warriors who'd served him for years, advisors he'd trusted. "Going somewhere?" Isolde asked. Her voice was eerily calm. She'd changed from the ceremonial gown into combat leathers, her hair pulled back, a blade at her hip. She looked like what she truly was. A predator. "Stand aside," Wolfram growled. "Whatever grievance you have, we can discuss it after we've secured the palace." "There's nothing to discuss," Isolde said. "You made your choice yesterday. You chose the Omega over your Luna, over pack law, over everything we built together. So now I'm making mine." "You killed council members," Wolfram said. "That's treason. Punishable by death." "Only if you're alive to punish me," Isolde said. She smiled, and it was the smile of someone who'd already committed to a path of no return. "I didn't want it to come to this, Wolfram. I really didn't. I tried to be the perfect Luna for you. Tried to give you everything you needed. But it was never enough, was it? Because I wasn't her." "This isn't about Greta," Wolfram said, though he knew it was a lie even as he spoke. "Everything is about Greta." Isolde screamed, and her composure finally cracked. "Everything has always been about her. Even when she was gone, she was here. In your thoughts, in your son's cries, in every moment you looked at me and wished I was someone else." She took a shaking breath. "So I'm going to fix it. I'm going to remove the problem at its source." She looked past Wolfram directly at Greta, and the murder in her eyes was unmistakable. "You'll have to go through me first," Wolfram said quietly. He set Friedrich down and pushed him toward Greta. "Get him out of here," he told her. "Take the back passage. It leads to the stables. Go." "I'm not leaving you," Greta said. "You have to. Friedrich is what matters. If anything happens to him." "Nothing is going to happen to him," a new voice said. Conrad emerged from a side corridor, flanked by a dozen more guards. The old elder looked exhausted but determined. "Isolde, you are charged with treason, murder, and conspiracy to commit regicide." Surrender now and your death will be swift. Continue, and I promise you it will be neither swift nor painless. Isolde laughed. You think I'm afraid of death? I'm already dead, Conrad. I died the moment Wolfram chose her over me. Everything after this is just cleaning up. Then you'll die for nothing, Conrad said. Because even if you kill them all today, the Lost Bloodline won't disappear. The prophecy won't be undone. All you'll accomplish is proving that the old ways, your ways, lead only to violence and chaos. Then let there be chaos, Isolde said. She shifted. The transformation was instant and brutal. Her wolf was massive, pure white with eyes like blue ice, and she launched herself at Greta with all the speed and fury of an alpha-blooded warrior. The wolves behind her shifted too, a wave of fur and fangs surging forward. Wolfram met her mid-leap. His own shift was just as fast, his dark grey wolf larger than hers, dominant and enraged. They collided in midair with a sound like thunder, claws and teeth tearing, both of them fighting with everything they had. Around them, the corridor erupted into battle as Isolde's conspirators clashed with the guards. Go! Conrad shouted at Greta. Take the boy and run. Greta grabbed Friedrich and bolted. She knew the back passages. She'd explored them during her brief time in the palace 3 years ago, memorizing escape routes in case she ever needed them. It was the paranoia of an Omega who'd never felt truly safe, and now it might save their lives. They ran through twisting corridors, Friedrich clutching her neck, his small body trembling. Behind them, the sounds of battle echoed, snarls and screams and the wet sounds of flesh tearing. Mama, Papa, Friedrich whimpered. He'll be fine, Greta said, hoping it was true. Your papa is the strongest alpha in the territories. He'll win. But she'd seen the look in Isolde's eyes. That wasn't just anger. It was the look of someone who'd decided to take everyone down with her. Even if Wolfram won the fight, Isolde would make sure he paid a terrible price. They reached the stables, and Greta quickly saddled the fastest horse she could find. She was just lifting Friedrich onto the saddle when she heard footsteps behind her. She spun, knife raised, and found herself facing one of Isolde's wolves, a massive brute named Aldrich who'd always looked at her with contempt when she'd lived in the palace before. Going somewhere, Omega, he growled. He was still in human form, but his eyes held his wolf close to the surface. The Lady Isolde wants you dead. And I always complete my missions. Touch my son and I'll kill you, Greta said. Her voice was steady despite the fear coursing through her. Aldrich laughed. You. Kill me. You're an Omega. You probably can't even shift properly. This will be over in seconds. He moved faster than she expected, closing the distance between them in a single bound. Greta tried to dodge, but he was too quick, too strong. His hand closed around her throat, lifting her off the ground. Any last words? He asked. Greta couldn't speak with his hand crushing her windpipe. Black spots danced across her vision. This was it. She was going to die in a stable, and Friedrich was going to watch, and everything they'd survived. Friedrich screamed. It wasn't a cry of fear. It was a scream of pure rage, and with it came a wave of power that sent Aldrich flying backward into a stable wall hard enough to crack the wood. The wolf slumped to the ground, unconscious or dead. Greta couldn't tell which. She dropped to her knees, gasping for air, and looked at her son. Friedrich stood beside the horse, his small hands clenched into fists, his silver eyes blazing with power that shouldn't exist in a 4-year-old child. The 3 crescents on his shoulder blade, visible because his shirt had torn in their flight, were glowing with a soft golden light. Nobody hurts Mama, Friedrich said, and his voice carried the weight of absolute command. Nobody. The Lost Bloodline. Prophecy. It wasn't just legend. It was real, and it was manifesting in her son right now, called forth by his desperate need to protect her. Friedrich, Greta said carefully, approaching him slowly. Sweetheart, you need to calm down. You need to let the power go. But he hurt you, Friedrich said. His eyes were still blazing. He tried to take you away. I know, baby. But you stopped him. You saved me. Now we need to go find Papa and make sure he's okay. Can you do that? Can you be brave for me? Friedrich's expression wavered. The glow of the crescents began to fade. I want Papa, he whispered. Me too, Greta said. She scooped him up despite her bruised throat, despite her shaking hands, and climbed onto the horse. Hold on tight. She rode back toward the palace, her mind racing. Friedrich had power she'd only read about in her grandmother's journals. Power that could reshape the wolf kingdoms. Power that would make him a target for every wolf who wanted to control or destroy the prophesied heir. They needed help. They needed allies. And they needed them now. The battle in the palace had ended by the time they returned. Greta could smell blood and death heavy in the air. Guards were dragging bodies out of the corridors, some in human form, some still in wolf shape. The East Wing fire had been contained but was still smoking. She found Wolfram in the throne room, still in wolf form, standing over Isolde's body. Greta's breath caught. Isolde was dead. Very dead. Her throat had been torn out, and there was blood everywhere. On the floor, on the walls, on Wolfram's grey fur. As Greta watched, Wolfram shifted back to human form. He was covered in wounds, claw marks across his chest, a deep gash on his shoulder, bite marks on his arms. But he was alive. Is she? Greta couldn't finish the question. Yes, Wolfram said roughly. She wouldn't submit. Wouldn't surrender. I gave her every chance, but she kept coming. He looked at the body, his expression unreadable. She wanted to die. I think she'd wanted it for a long time. And I was too blind to see it. Friedrich slid down from Greta's arms and ran to his father. Wolfram caught him, holding him close despite his injuries. Are you hurt, Papa? Friedrich asked, touching one of the wounds carefully. I'll heal, Wolfram said. Are you both safe? I saw Aldrich follow you. Friedrich stopped him, Greta said. She met Wolfram's eyes across the room. He used the power Wolfram. The Lost Bloodline power. A 4-year-old shouldn't be able to do what he did. Wolfram's expression darkened. Show me. They went to the stables, where Aldrich still lay crumpled against the wall. Conrad joined them, along with several surviving council members. When they saw the damage, the cracked wood, the unconscious wolf, the burn marks on the ground where Friedrich's power had manifested, they exchanged grave looks. The prophecy is accelerating, Conrad said quietly. The power shouldn't emerge until puberty at the earliest. But the bloodline recognizes a threat to its survival and is manifesting early to protect the child. He looked at Friedrich with something like reverence. This changes everything. How? Wolfram demanded. Because now every pack in every territory will hear about this, Conrad said. They'll know the prophesied heir has been found. And they'll either bow to him, or they'll try to kill him before he grows strong enough to claim his birthright. Then we protect him, Wolfram said. We surround him with guards, with wards, with... It won't be enough, Greta interrupted. She'd been thinking about this the entire ride back. They'll keep coming. Every wolf who fears change, who wants to hold on to the old power structures, who sees Friedrich as a threat. We can't fight them all. What are you suggesting? Conrad asked. We leave, Greta said. We take Friedrich somewhere safe, somewhere remote. Let him grow up away from politics and assassination attempts and the weight of prophecy. When he's older, when he's stronger, when he actually understands what the Lost Bloodline means, then he can decide if he wants to claim his destiny. That's running, Wolfram said. We can't just abandon the throne. Can't we? Greta challenged. You just said yesterday that you'd kneel before me if the council decided I should rule. That you'd give up your throne. Well, I'm deciding. I'm deciding that our son's life is worth more than any crown. I'm deciding that he deserves a childhood instead of being a political pawn. The packs need leadership, Conrad protested. Without a clear ruler, we'll descend into civil war. Then appoint a regent, Greta said. Rule by council until Friedrich comes of age. You've done it before when the throne was vacant. You can do it again. The people won't accept it, another council member said. Not after yesterday. Not after the prophecy has been confirmed. They'll see it as the king abandoning his duty. Let them, Greta said. Her voice hardened. I've spent 3 years surviving in the wilderness alone. Can do it again. And this time I'll have Wolfram with me, and we'll raise our son in peace. Away from all of this. She gestured at the carnage around them. The blood, the bodies, the destruction that had come from one day of political upheaval. This is what the throne costs, she said. I won't pay that price. Not with my son's life. Not anymore. Wolfram was silent for a long moment. Then he said, Friedrich, what do you want? The boy looked up at him with those 2 wise silver eyes. I want to be with Mama and Papa, he said simply. I don't want to be a heir or a king or special. I just want to be Friedrich. And just like that, Wolfram's decision was made. We leave at dawn, he said. Conrad, you'll lead the council as regent until Friedrich comes of age. I'm abdicating. The announcement sent shockwaves through the council. Some protested. Some called it cowardice. Some accused him of abandoning his people in their time of need. But Conrad silenced them all with a single raised hand. He's choosing his family, the old elder said. For once, an alpha king is choosing love over power. Maybe that's the lesson we all need to learn. He looked at Wolfram. Go, raise your son. When he's ready to return, if he ever is, we'll be waiting. Until then, I'll hold the territories together. Thank you, Wolfram said quietly. Don't thank me yet, Conrad replied. This is going to be complicated. Some packs won't accept it. There will be challenges. Blood and chaos before order is restored. Better that chaos than my son's death, Wolfram said. They spent the night preparing. Wolfram gathered supplies, money, everything they'd need to survive on the run. Greta retrieved her grandmother's journals from their hiding place, the proof of her lineage that she'd keep safe until Friedrich was old enough to understand. As dawn broke over the northern territories, 3 figures slipped out of the palace through a side gate. An alpha king abandoning his throne. An omega carrying a bloodline thought lost. A 4-year-old boy who might one day unite all the wolf kingdoms. They disappeared into the wilderness, heading for the borderlands where pack law held no sway, where they could live as a family instead of as political pieces on a chessboard. Behind them, the council convened to begin the difficult work of ruling without a king. Ahead of them lay uncertainty, danger, and the constant threat of discovery. But for the first time in 3 years they were together. And for now that was enough. 6 months passed. They settled in a cabin deep in the borderlands, far from any pack territory. Wolfram hunted. Greta tended a garden and taught Friedrich to read using her grandmother's journals. The boy's power manifested occasionally, small bursts when he was frightened or angry, but it was manageable, controllable. They lived simply, peacefully. But peace never lasted forever. It was Greta who noticed them first. Wolves in the tree-line watching the cabin. Not approaching, not attacking. Just watching. We've been found, she told Wolfram that night after Friedrich was asleep. How many? He asked. At least a dozen. Maybe more. Wolfram's jaw tightened. I'll deal with it. He went out alone the next morning, following the scent trails until he found their watchers. They were young wolves, barely past their first shift, and they approached him with a mixture of fear and reverence. Alpha King, one said, dropping to one knee. We mean no harm. We've been searching for you for months. Why? Wolfram demanded. Because the territories are falling apart, the young wolf said. Packs are turning on each other. The council can't hold it together. We need. He looked up at Wolfram with desperate eyes. We need the prophesied heir. We need hope. Wolfram felt a chill run down his spine. It had only been 6 months. 6 months of relative peace, of pretending they could escape their fate. But the prophecy didn't care about their wishes. The Lost Bloodline didn't care about their need for normalcy. The wolf kingdoms were calling for their king. And sooner or later, Friedrich would have to answer. "Go back," Wolfram said harshly. "Tell them we're not coming. Tell them to figure it out themselves." "But, Alpha King." "I'm not your king anymore," Wolfram interrupted. "I abdicated. I have no pack, no throne, no duty to you or anyone else. Leave us alone." The young wolves left, but Wolfram knew they'd be back. Or others would come. The secret of their location would spread. Word would reach hostile packs who wanted Friedrich dead rather than fulfilling the prophecy. That night he discussed it with Greta. "We need to move again," he said. "Go deeper into the borderlands. Maybe cross into human territory where wolves rarely go." "We can't keep running forever," Greta said. "Eventually we'll have to face this. Friedrich will have to face this. He's 4 years old. He won't be 4 forever. What happens in 10 years? 20? Will we still be running then? Will we raise him to be afraid of his own destiny?" "I'll raise him to be safe," Wolfram said fiercely. "Safe and afraid are different things," Greta replied. She took his hand. "I don't want to go back to the palace any more than you do. But maybe there's a middle path. Maybe we can let Friedrich grow up here in peace, but also teach him about his power, about what he could do for the wolf kingdoms. And when he's old enough, let him choose." "And if he chooses the throne?" Wolfram asked. "If he decides to embrace the prophecy, then we support him," Greta said simply. "Because we're his parents, and that's what parents do. We don't get to decide his destiny for him. We can only give him the tools to decide for himself." Wolfram wanted to argue, wanted to insist they could keep Friedrich isolated, keep him safe forever. But he knew Greta was right. The boy was already asking questions about why they lived alone, why they never saw other wolves, why his papa never talked about being a king. Friedrich deserved answers. Deserved the chance to understand who he was and who he might become. "We'll start with the journals," Wolfram said finally. "Teach him about the Lost Bloodline. About what his grandmother's family sacrificed. And we'll see how he handles it." "Together," Greta said. "Together," Wolfram agreed. But that night, as he lay awake listening to Friedrich's steady breathing in the next room, Wolfram couldn't shake the feeling that their time was running out. That peace was just an illusion, and the real battle, the battle for his son's soul, his son's future, was just beginning. And he was terrified that no matter what they did, no matter how hard they fought, the prophecy would claim Friedrich in the end. Because that's what prophecies did. They destroyed the people who tried to outrun them. The attack came 3 nights later. Not the young wolves who'd been watching. Not representatives from the council. These were assassins, professional killers hired by one of the packs that feared the prophecy. They came in the dead of night, moving silently through the forest, their scents masked by herbs and magic. By the time Wolfram's instincts screamed danger, they were already surrounding the cabin. He woke Greta with a hand over her mouth. "Take Friedrich and run," he whispered. "South, toward the river. Don't stop. What about you? I'll hold them off. Buy you time. Wolfram, go!" Greta grabbed their son and fled out the back window just as the front door exploded inward. Wolfram shifted and met the attackers head-on. His wolf tearing into the first one with savage fury. There were 8 of them. All skilled fighters. All determined to complete their mission. Wolfram fought like a demon, using every ounce of his alpha power and years of combat experience. He took down 3 before the others managed to coordinate their attacks. Claws raked across his sides. Teeth found his shoulder. He was outnumbered and wounded, but he kept fighting, kept buying time for Greta and Friedrich to escape. In the forest, Greta ran with Friedrich clutched against her chest. The boy was crying, confused and terrified. Behind them, she could hear the sounds of battle, snarls and screams that made her heart race. She reached the river and started to cross, the icy water soaking through her clothes. Halfway across, she heard footsteps behind her. One of the assassins had broken away from the fight to pursue them. Greta turned, putting herself between the wolf and Friedrich. She had no weapon, no power. Nothing but her desperation and a mother's fury. "Please," she said. "He's just a child. Let him go." The wolf shifted to human form. It was a woman, scarred and cold-eyed. "Can't do that," she said. "Contract says the heir dies." "Nothing personal." "Everything about this is personal," Greta said. The assassin pulled a knife and advanced. Greta backed up, her foot slipping on the riverbed rocks, and she fell. Friedrich tumbled from her arms into the water, swept away by the current immediately. "Friedrich!" Greta screamed. She dove after him, her only thought to save her son. The assassin hesitated for just a moment, watching a mother's desperate attempt to rescue her drowning child, and in that moment something changed in the air. The water around Friedrich began to glow. The 3 crescents on his shoulder blade blazed with golden light so bright it lit up the entire river. And the water itself, began to respond to him. It lifted him up, cradled him, carried him gently to the shore. The Lost Bloodline didn't just give him power over wolves. It gave him power over the elements themselves. The assassin stared in shock. Greta stared in shock. And Friedrich, barely conscious, coughed up water and cried for his mother. The golden light flared brighter, and a wave of pure force exploded outward from the boy. The assassin was thrown backward into a tree hard enough to break bones. Greta was gently pushed to shore, and the forest itself seemed to bend around Friedrich, protecting him. Back at the cabin, Wolfram felt the surge of power and his heart soared. Friedrich was alive. Not just alive. His son had awakened something incredible. With renewed strength, he fought off the remaining assassins, killing 2 more and forcing the others to retreat. He limped toward the river, following his son's scent, and found Greta holding Friedrich on the shore. The boy was glowing. Actually glowing. His entire body suffused with golden light. His eyes blazing silver. "Papa," Friedrich said when he saw Wolfram. His voice sounded different. Older, more resonant. "I can feel everything. Trees, the river, the wolves. Everything is connected." "I know, son," Wolfram said gently. "It's your gift. Your birthright." "It's scary," Friedrich whispered, and suddenly he was just a 4-year-old again, the glow fading, leaving him exhausted and small. "I don't want it. I don't want to be special." "I know," Wolfram said, gathering both Friedrich and Greta into his arms. "I know." But as he held his family, Wolfram understood with terrible clarity that they couldn't run anymore. Friedrich's power was manifesting too strongly, too publicly. Word of this would spread. More assassins would come. And eventually someone would succeed. Unless they stopped running and started fighting back. "We have to go back," Greta said quietly, reading his thoughts. "Don't we?" Wolfram nodded grimly. "If we want Friedrich to survive long enough to choose his own destiny, yes. We need the protection of the pact territories. We need allies. The Council will try to control him," Greta said. "Then we'll make it clear that any attempt to manipulate our son will result in a very quick and very violent end," Wolfram said. His voice was ice. "I gave up my throne for peace. But if peace is impossible, then I'll take back that throne by force and use it to protect what's mine." He looked down at Friedrich, at his son who carried the weight of an ancient prophecy, and made a silent vow. No more running. No more hiding. From this moment forward, they would face their enemies head-on. And anyone who threatened his family would learn exactly why Wolfram had been called the most dangerous Alpha King in 5 generations. The prophecy wanted Friedrich. It would have to go through his parents first. And neither Wolfram nor Greta had any intention of making that easy. The end. Or is it? Because the real battle is just beginning. Friedrich's power has been revealed to the world. The Council awaits their return. Hostile pacts are mobilizing. And somewhere in the Northern Territories, rumors are spreading of an ancient enemy, a pack thought extinct, descendants of those who'd slaughtered the Lost Bloodline 500 years ago, awakening to finish what their ancestors started. The prophecy spoke of a child who would unite the wolf kingdoms. It never said he'd survive long enough to do it. And as Wolfram, Greta, and Friedrich journey back toward the territories that had exiled them, toward a throne neither parent wanted but both would kill to protect, one question remains. Will Friedrich embrace his destiny? Or will his destiny destroy him first?